Frances Watkins is with us as well, John. She's a journalist with the Limerick Leader, but she was in over the hospital over the last few days with her sister. Frances, can you talk us through your own experience, your sister's experience?
Yeah, so my sister she went in on Tuesday. She was actually referred by a different medical practitioner, and she was referred on Tuesday evening. So she went in. Now, in fairness, the lady said to her, if you go in the evening, it should be okay. So she did. Went headed in with my mum, and the first night they were there, they ended up sleeping on the waiting room, basically the waiting room chairs. They were just told that there was nowhere for them to go, really. Now she's 17, so she's almost an adult, but obviously she's still a child. So my mother was concerned about her. But the first night, my mum said it wasn't too bad. They kind of expected the wait, if that makes sense. They weren't too bothered by it. But by 3:00 the next day, things hadn't really progressed, and she had gone for a few scans. She had seen a doctor, but she still wasn't getting the care that she needed to get. I then went in at 4:00 yesterday evening, and my mum came home for a rest, and I stayed with her then last night. And it was just chaos, to be honest. And now the staff were just amazing. Like, they were going above and beyond for everyone. They themselves were just so frustrated. There was one nurse in particular. She was nearly in tears when she was talking to us, because she was just kept apologising and saying sorry, and they were doing everything they could, and you really felt that they were absolutely trying their best for everyone, but there was just nothing they could do, And then eventually my sister got a trolley at about 9:00 last night.
Yeah.
And she was placed in a corridor, which was kind of fine at first, and then I kind of looked around, and now this corridor was packed. There was no room for me to even stand up. She was placed up against the door, actually, so her trolley was pushed up against the door, so every time the door opened, the trolley got a whack, which woke her up. But I had nowhere kind of to stand to kind of, sit with her or whatever. So, but I was very concerned because, she's a 17-year-old girl. She was the youngest person there by quite a few years, and she was surrounded by, elderly people, really. There's nothing the nurses or the doctors could do about it. There was nowhere to put her. But I myself was very concerned to leave her there on her own.
Yeah.
And she was asleep. She fell asleep pretty quickly, thank God. But I, didn't want to leave her there on her own, unaccompanied. I didn't want to ask a nurse to kind of keep an eye on her because they were so busy. So I kind of just stood there and kept an eye over her, and eventually I went off for kind of a little snooze in the early hours of the morning. But, there was just no improvement throughout the early hours of the night.
Yeah.
The numbers coming in were just constant. There was no lull. It just seemed like more and more people just kept appearing.
Frances, I don't know what the worst aspect of that story is, that she spent so long sitting in a chair that ultimately after the chair all they could manage was a trolley in a corridor, that the trolley was up against a door that kept continually being opened during the night and smacking into her trolley and waking her up. And that, as you say, yes, she's 17, she's close to being an adult, but just being close doesn't make you an adult. And she was essentially an unaccompanied minor left in the corridor of a hospital overnight.
Yeah, no, it was, it was hard because, listen, she wasn't desperately ill. She wasn't, in desperate need of attention. And there was people there. I know there was people there who were, in much more need than she was. I'm not saying that, but she is a child. Legally, she is a child. And I asked that question about 3:00 this morning. I said, "Listen, is there, can you put her in the children's ward? Is there room there?" And I was told, "No, not possible." So I said, "Okay, there's nothing they could do about it." But it was just, to be honest. I understand the system, and I've been in the hospital before. I understand how under pressure it was. But last night, I was standing there at one stage about 11:00 last night. All the lights were on, obviously, because the nurses are walking around. Lights were blaring down on her. The door was open. She'd been in there now since the day before, bear in mind she hadn't slept at all. And I actually got a bit emotional because I was like, not just for my sister, but for everybody there. I was like, this isn't fair. This isn't fair on anyone. It's not fair on the patients, not fair on the nurses, the doctors, everyone who works there, it really hit me then. I think you read these things in the paper, you see them on the news, and you don't really take into account how bad it is until you're actually in that situation.
Yeah, like I say, I don't know what the worst aspect of it is. Even having gone through it all, I still can't work it out. So many elements of it. In so many ways, your sister was let down. And look, not just her, as you say, others in the hospital too. And the staff working there, of course, and trying to do their best working there.